for the California Gold Rush. This is the last section of the year. This is the last loom of the year. Can I get a what? Can I get a woo? All right. So who lived in California before the gold rush? So California was basically made up of two groups of humans. Number one, the biggest group by far, the Native Americans, and then a group called Californios. So these are Mexican or Spanish descendant people that are living in this area that at that time was the northernmost part of the Mexican territory. So California mostly is made up of Californios and Native Americans. And then in 1848, they were building a sawmill on the American River, and one of Sutter's carpenters, named James Marshall, discovered that there was gold in the river. And this started the California Gold Rush. Later, miners found gold in other nearby streams, and there was a big rush to go out to California and get rich by discovering gold. So in 1848, gold was discovered where? In California. And then Sutter's Mill. What was Sutter's Mill? Before it was a place to get rich quick, they cut up trees to make boards for construction. So get to the gold. There was three basic ways to get to California from the East Coast. Either sail from the East Coast all the way around the southern tip of South America, all the way up the Pacific Ocean, or you could sail from the East Coast to Panama, walk across Panama, because the Panama Canal is not going to be built for another over 50 years, or you could travel across America. Out of the three, the travel across America was the most dangerous, but it was the cheapest, and so that's why most people did it. Out of the people that went to the California Gold Rush, most were young, single, white men from the East Coast. So how many routes to get there? There were three. And then life in the mining camps was very hard. Rarely did miners become rich, even though there were rumors about people finding 8-pound nuggets of gold all the time. It rarely, if it all happened. Supplies were very expensive. And most of the time, the only people that really became rich were those that sold the supplies to the miners that they used to find the gold. Because whether a miner found the gold or not, if you sold them the supplies, you made guaranteed money. So what type of people got rich the most during the gold rush? The supply store owners. So about 2/3 of all the miners were Americans. Most miners were white men from New England. So think about that. Most of the people that went to the California Gold Rush were the furthest distance away from California, New England. So that just goes to show you how bad life was in those New England mill towns, that they were willing to risk their life to get all the way over to California and then risk that they would ever find any gold. Native Americans, free slaved and enslaved after Americans, also worked in the mines. Foreigners came from Mexico, Europe, South America, Australia, and China. And by 1851, just a couple years after, 1849, 1/10 of all miners were from China. So most of the miners came from New England, and then most of the foreigners came from China. So what percentage of the miners were American? 67%. What American area made up most of the 49er population? The New England area. Now, the Chinese had success because of two basic reasons. They were used to backbreaking work, and they were patient. Because of the Chinese success, the amount of new Chinese coming to America and their different ways, Americans grew angry towards them. So what immigrant group made up most of the gold miners out of the immigrant groups? The Chinese. And conflict started amongst the miners. So problems started to occur once the ease of finding the gold was gone. After California became a state in 1850, the Native Americans, the Chinese opened up shops and restaurants and laundries that made them way more money than the mining. The Native Americans' lives were ruined. Some of these Chinese businesses are still part of a neighborhood in San Francisco known as Chinatown. So because of Mining population increases. California later became a state. And then the impact of the gold rush. So not far from San Francisco is what eventually would become California's capital city, Sacramento. Now, this starts to cause problems in America. So California became a free state in 1850. California was the 31st state, so at the time, the North would never allow the South to have more southern states that had slavery than North that didn't. But now there were 16 free states and 15 slave states. The slave states were afraid that the free states would abolish slavery because now look, there's one extra free state than there are slave. And every time the slave states tried to get one extra state admitted to the Union, the North wouldn't allow it unless there was an equal northern state to join at the same time. And even though California was an area that was a free state, they did not let free African Americans vote. Just like in the northern states, even though they were free, they were not allowed to vote. So when California was admitted to the U.S. being the 31st state, this causes, which eventually is going to lead to the start of the Civil War, more and more laws and bills passed to help and favor northern free states over southern slave states until the South says in late 1860, we don't want to be part of this country anymore. You're not taking us serious. And states start to leave America, even though Abe Lincoln wins the election in November of 1860. They start to leave even before he's sworn in as official president at the beginning of 1861.